What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 0 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my co-host of now going on 7 years, if you include the Jenna Juice, Colin Wilson. It's here. We are recording this 3 days away, soon to be 2. And before you know it, we'll be off and running on another grind of a season. You excited, brother?
Am I excited? Why are we the best podcast in the world? Because we move UMass lines, which I'm going to hold you directly responsible for it. Now you're showing up here, for those of you without visuals, wearing your UMass t-shirt. I'm about to run through a wall because it's the side I want to take. I can't. This is the Week 0 podcast. We get to give all these G5 teams that we have to kind of, gloss over during the season. We get to give them full attention. So I love this podcast. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I will also say it's kind of Week 0 to me. It's kind of like bowl season that like sometimes you just have to fire on the game, even though you don't. So, and I actually think there's bigger edges early on when there's more uncertainty. So I'll be betting most of these games on Saturday. It's been long enough. So, and I actually really like and show edges on most of the games. So we will go through them one by one. And it's good to be back. I'm glad. Shout out to all the listeners. You guys make the podcast. It's just feels good to be back. So let's start things off in Dublin. Naturally, we'll start the American college football off in Ireland on 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Make sure you have your schedules cleared. NBC, Notre Dame, 20.5, 21-point favorite, depending on where you look, over Navy. Over-unders come down from 51 to 49.5, 49, depending on where you look. This is the 96th meeting in this historic rivalry. It's the third in Dublin, for what it's worth. Notre Dame won 54 to 27 in 96. They also rolled in 2012, but that was the Notre Dame team that went undefeated and went to the national championship game. Let me see if we got to stop for Mitchell. Mitchell? Yeah, do you need any special reads or anything? Okay, and then can I do how many giveaways can I do? As many as I want. All right. Later. Are we good to keep going? Okay. All right. So obviously, big story. These two teams played last year. Navy covered. They went down big early, stormed back, and made it a game in a 3-point loss. You had many different quarterbacks. You were down to a quarterback that's no longer on the Notre Dame roster. You're down to like the third and fourth string on Navy. They will have different quarterbacks. Notre Dame will obviously have Sam Hartman coming in to rejuvenate the quarterback room. And he'll work behind a very good offensive line with 2 really good tackles. Wide receiver room has some talent, but a lot of questions there. Navy, meanwhile, Ty Lavatai was a little more, passing ability than most Navy quarterbacks. Mainly it's just, hey, lull the defense to sleep, and then we're going to take some deep shots. We'll get the start. He's the experienced guy. And then Blake Horvath, who has never played a collegiate game, will probably get some run. He is a pure option runner. And then you also have Xavier Arline, who they're trying to work in at the slot and other places. He was playing lacrosse, got banged up. You might see him too. You have a new head coach and Brian Newberry from the staff, and a new offensive coordinator, Grant Chestnut, who comes over from Kennesaw State. Not the same exact offense, but option principles. You might see a few wrinkles, some trick plays, some more different formations, maybe Erline in the slot, you'll maybe see reverse passes, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what the Navy offense looks like. The defense does return 9 starters. I really like the hire of secondary coach Eric Lewis, who has really improved secondaries wherever he's been, most recently at Bowling Green. So before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of this matchup, Colin, what do you see here? Sam Hartman has torn apart we watched him tear apart a service academy secondary, and this Navy secondary was really bad last year. They have experience returning. You get a new secondary coach. You hope for a little bump there. You also have to worry about Navy being a little undersized on the defensive line, but they shoot gaps and they'll try to create chaos that way, and they tend to hold their own, and their run defense was fantastic last year. Is Notre Dame going to come out here and try to pound them with their size and their offensive line? Are they going to try to throw with the secondary? What do you think the Notre Dame approaches here, and how do you think this game plays out? Could be a little cloudy and maybe some rain, but looks like it might taper off by night when this game kicks at 7:30 Eastern in Dublin time. What do you see here?
Yeah, teams aren't fast enough for us to handicap what the turf is going to be over in Dublin, but there's a lot of change on both sides of the ball. Gerard Parker gets promoted from tight end coach to offensive coordinator after Tommy Rees left. Parker's never been given this opportunity to be an offensive coordinator. He was going to join Cincinnati staff with Luke Fickell before he got a DUI in 2017. He had to resign from his position, so it's sort of a big thing. It is a big day for Parker, for Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. And the reason that he got the job word on the street is that he had the best chemistry with Sam Hartman when Sam Hartman got to campus. So we'll see if that translates onto the field. I don't expect anything. I mean, Hartman can throw it down the field. He can torch this secondary. But at the same time, who returns? Jaden Thomas. He had 25 catches last year. Both are freshmen, Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores. Both have drawn praise from the coaching staff. But, I mean, there's no experience there whatsoever. So Audric Estime is going to run the ball.
You also lose one of the best tight ends in college football.
Michael Mayer was the entire offense. Yeah, the entire offense. So a lot of change over here. I expect Notre Dame to start slow. I think Hartman's going to take shots downfield, but you're doing that with some very inexperienced wide receiver unit. And from what I hear, his favorite targets in training camp has been freshmen. So when you flip over to the Navy side, yeah, we have a lot of change. I hate other places that say, well, we don't know what Navy is going to do. No, we know exactly what Navy's going to do. You mentioned Chestnut comes in from Kennesaw State. He's a Paul Johnson disciple. He played offensive tackle at Georgia Southern for Paul Johnson. It's going to be the spread option. Listen, Kennesaw led the Big South in rushing and scoring the last 5 seasons. They had a top 3 rushing attack in the FCS, but they are going to throw the ball. And everybody's freaked out about this, Navy's throwing the ball. But let's break down the tape here. What they really do is they go into 3 wide receiver sets, and then they dump off in the flats to running backs and tight ends, or they'll run bubble screens. They don't take shots downfield, like average depth of target, like 2 yards. So what I see is yes, we have a different way to run the triple. They did name Blake Horvath as quarterback 1 on the depth chart, but Ty Lavatai was also right beneath him. They said it's 1A, 1B. Lavatai is going to get a lot of play. They picked Horvath as number 1 on the depth chart. They said that his throwing fundamentals and decision-making is what separated him from everybody else. So I'm wondering, when that doesn't work against Notre Dame, do you bring Ty Lavatai in to completely just run the triple?
Yeah, but Lavatai is going to start the game. He's going to start the first series because Newberry said that Horvath, it would be a tough thing for him to, come into his first collegiate experience and first collegiate game starting off. So, yeah, you might see him on the second drive. But Lavatai's going to actually start the first drive.
We saw a massive shift. We're recording this on Wednesday. We saw a massive shift in the total today. I think some 50.5s are out there, and now they all got blown away to about 48.5, 48 being a very big key number in totals. And I think that's, Notre Dame's going to run a lot. Navy's still going to burn a whole ton of clock. I love Navy's rush defense here. They didn't really lose anybody out of the front 7. They finished 4th in line yards, top 25 in havoc. And you're right. They shoot the gap and they kind of clog up the run. So I expect periods of inactivity on the scoreboard here. And with that total stuck going down 49, 48, and that point spread continuing to sit on 20.5, 21 out there if you can find it, I love the spread. I like the Navy side. I already laid money on it a couple months ago. They retain a healthy amount of defenders. Like I mentioned about the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, there's going to be some soul searching there at the very beginning. This total keeps going down. I mean, look at Notre Dame last year. Last November, they only rushed for 66 yards against Navy. And, there's only been, that was last November, one of the last games of the year. So I don't see a huge change in how this defense prepares under Newberry for this offense. And the last thing I'll say about this game is I'm reminded of 3 years ago going into the pandemic. There was this big talk about Navy not being physical. They were out there tackling tires. They weren't tackling each other. They were tackling tires, tackling the grass. No physicality in practice whatsoever. Brian Newberry takes over, and some of the first things he's saying is, we must be physical. We must be physical. We're going to beat the crap out of each other during the summer. So that's fine. But then I go and read Marcus Freeman. And Marcus Freeman said, we've done everything we can in 20 practices during training camp to stay as healthy as possible. We're down 79% in dehydrations. We have half the concussions we had a year ago. And I'm not saying you can't put this in a spreadsheet. I can't mathematically do this. But these teams that really take it easy on physicality and in their training camp can sometimes come out and take a couple punches in the face before they really turn it around in the middle of the game. So I think Navy has a chance to actually start off a little hot here.
We saw that with Navy a couple years ago. Remember, they didn't tackle and they didn't do tackling drills, and they just got destroyed.
BYU
in
55-3
in that week 1 game. There a couple other interesting nuggets for this game. I was kind of looking back at, the preparation for Notre Dame is interesting because, they spent 2 full weeks, and it's nice when you get the extra time to prepare for the triple option. Now, there's going to be some new wrinkles that Kennesaw State offensive coordinator Grant Chestnut brings in. So it's not just, hey, we're preparing for the straight option. Freeman, he was a defensive coordinator, he gave up 42 the first time he saw triple option, then 0, and then 10. But last year, the game plan all went to Al Golden, who has a perfect name to be a Notre Dame defensive coordinator. And he has the game plan again this year. And, I know Navy started slow, but they still scored 32 points, 260 yards rushing, 5.5 a clip. So the one thing that does give me pause for concern, Navy's last 3 openers, as bad as you can get. They lost 14-7 to Delaware, 49-7 to Marshall, and 55-3 against BYU. They scored a total of 17 points in those 3 games. But this is a different offense. That Navy offense had gone stale, and
it's a different coaching regime.
Yeah.
It's a different coaching regime too.
Yep, a change was needed, and they made one. I also think that it's worth noting that one of Notre Dame's linebackers didn't play. One of their better linebackers didn't play versus Navy last year, and they have a pretty good linebacking duo. But their defensive line has some questions, and that's something that Navy potentially could take advantage of. And Navy's not trying to throw down the field, which takes away one of the strengths of this Notre Dame defense, which is their pair of corners, which are really good. Potential All-American on one side, and then someone who's been around forever, who's been really good when healthy on the other side. So in Hart, but I think that the intangibles here, you have if there is some weather, some wind or some rain, doesn't look like it'll be a factor, but that obviously would help Navy. So that can only help the Navy side. Also the traveling and the jet lag and the discipline to go over to Dublin and stay focused. It's a service academy team. You would have to favor Navy in that aspect. And plus, who's better at handling jet lag and traveling in the air than the Navy? For me, this is an obvious play for me. If you've listened to this podcast before, it's a service academy catching over 2 touchdowns. There's no way I'm not playing Navy here. Waiting for that flat 21. I'm trying to get some people to get looks like some Bet Rivers Parks. There's 21 minus 112. Texted a few people. Try to get that in now. And I would still play the 20F. See if that 21 pops. If you can get the 21 when you're listening, I don't know what'll be out there. But it's Service Academy catching 3 touchdowns. Total's coming down to, they want to limit possessions. Clock will be going. Could have some Notre Dame growing pains early on. And it's Navy. They're never going to quit. Just look at last year. Like, you could easily get a backdoor here. And, some nuance to their offense, and then seeing 2 quarterbacks, they'll have some tricks up their sleeve here. And it's not like Notre Dame doesn't have, as I said, issues on the defensive line, and they're breaking in a new offense as well. The stat I'll leave you with for the Navy side, if Navy doesn't cover, fine. It'll suck. It's the first game. But taking Service Academies catching over 2 touchdowns, I've done it for as long as I can remember, and they treated me very well. Since 2005, Service Academies catching over 14 points, 42, 22, and 2 against the spread, 65.5%. That included this matchup last year So yeah, give me the middies. Keep this close. Should be an interesting game to watch. All right, let's move on to the second game. I mean, this day, people are like, "Oh, there's no good teams playing." This day was crafted for this podcast and for me specifically. Service Academy catching over 2 touchdowns. UMass, Minor Nation. Like, give me a break. This is a glorious day. So let's go to Minor Nation. Lane 1 at Jacksonville State. I think that's still 1. Let me check the updated line. Yeah, lane 1.5. Over under is shot up from 51.5 up to 53.5, 54. This game will be played 5:30 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Again, my favorite network as well. UTEP, this will obviously be Jacksonville State's first game in the FBS, so you can imagine they're going to be pretty fired up. I think that's a little overrated narrative, though. That could also work against them, right? Like trying to make too many things happen, and it's definitely an aggressive team. It's Rich Rodriguez, if you weren't familiar, is the head coach at Jacksonville State. It's the Rich Rod offense, pace. Rich Rod was the first coach ever to use the pure zone read with a quarterback, by the way, ahead of the curve there. Simple offensive line reads, and then just kind of test the perimeter of defenses, a lot of slants and fast pace, a lot of pace as well for a Rich Rod offense. Last year, you had a 6-year quarterback, Zion Webb. Can't really throw the ball. I think he only had 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, but he can run it. And they had a really good back who will not be playing. He's not on the depth chart. He's hurt in Anwar Lewis.
Right.
Why, you think he might play?
Well, now, yeah. I mean, so to jump in here, like Anwar Lewis is not on the depth chart. They said his injury was too much for him to play. Now today it's tweeted out there's a chance that he might be healthy before the game. So I'll get to that part, but that it's such a big piece.
Yeah, he was big. Averaged like 7 yards per carry last year. They have 2 guys listed on the depth chart at quarterback. Even though Zion Webb got cleared, he received a waiver for his 7th year. But he will start. But Logan Smothers, I had money on Logan Smothers once at Nebraska. He came into the game, or I remember at one point I had money on Logan Smothers. But the Nebraska transfer is also a quarterback who will see some packages here. The way that I look at this game, if you're wondering, it's hard to gauge these FCS teams when they're making the jump. We saw JMU have a ton of success last year, and when I look back historically, some teams have a ton of success, some teams go winless, and it's not a huge sample size, and the results are all over the map. If you're wondering, last year they lost 54-17 at Tulsa. The year before they lost 31-0 UAB, but they did win at Florida State. UTEP. When I look at this game, I'm curious to get your thoughts. I think I'm going to bet Minor Nation here. I'm worried that their special teams are going to cost them the game, I just have this feeling. But they lost a really good kicker. But I show a little value in this line. The Jacksonville State defense is horrific. I mean, they gave up like 400 yards per game FCS level last year. They are very undersized, and specifically, they are undersized on the defensive line. That is my biggest concern here because UTEP's biggest strength is their offensive line. It is massive offensive line. They're going to lean on their ground game, and they should be able to just run at will. And that's the UTEP offense. And the UTEP offense is basically, they have Gavin Hardison back at quarterback. They also got Tyron Smith, their leading receiver, who went to Texas A&M, transferred, and then came back, and he's on the depth chart. He's their best receiver. Huge addition.
Yep.
But their offense is hard, like just run, pound you with a really, really good offensive line and really big. And then Hardison, who's not an efficient, accurate passer, but he'll just take deep shots, right? Like it's just all explosiveness. And this Jacksonville State defense is very aggressive. Like they try to get like just havoc plays, and then they kind of play at the offense. And then otherwise they're just going to give up points. Well, they're going to get like burnt here, and then they're not going to be able to defend the run. And I just think UTEP's going to defend the trenches. UTEP's run defense is the strength of their team. Their secondary does have more experience coming back, but that's Jacksonville State wants to run the ball. They also want to go really fast. So I think that just UTEP will get a couple more stops here, and they'll be able to more consistently move the ball because of their advantage in the trenches. So, yeah, and the other good thing is if UTEP doesn't cover, we can blame Minor Nation for losing to an FCS team, and he has to call into the voicemail. By the way, reminder on the voicemails, we'll be starting them back up. So just call in whenever you can. I will tweet the number all the time, but it's 959-BAD-BEAT. If you're new to the show, you call in. We have callers who call in. They can bitch, complain, yell, scream, praise us if you want, but usually it's negative or just funny, drunk ramblings, and then we play a recap on the Monday episode. It's a lot of fun and very cathartic, and you can hear other people bitch about losing money on the same games that you did. But yeah, Minor Nation, one of our favorite callers. Hope to hear from him after this weekend. I'm riding Minor Nation. The line's sitting at 1. I'm going to see where it goes. Maybe Jacksonville State takes some money. I don't know where the market's going to go on this because people could have very differing opinions on Jacksonville State. What do you see here?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I had to do was check to see if Jacksonville was in the Eastern or Central time zone. As we know, UTEP failed to record a win, I believe, in 27 straight Eastern time zone games until they went to Club Lit last year and beat Charlotte. So sadly enough, Jacksonville State is in the Central time zone, so it did not apply, but keep that in your thoughts as well. UTEP goes on their road schedule. So yeah, you're right. Gavin Hardison's coming back for a 5th year. He gets 3 sixth-year seniors in front of him on the offensive line. So I don't really see a lot of problems coming out of this UTEP offense from running the ball, although we'll see who the bell cow is going to be. But Tyron Smith, 122 catches a year ago, tried to transfer to Texas A&M. His credits did not apply, so he withdrew his transfer portal and stayed at UTEP. That's a monster. I think
Huge.
The best wide receiver in Conference USA by far. So, and the reason why Gavin Hardison has like such a huge average depth of target, he's a great deep ball thrower. That's because UTEP is generally like 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15. Like they're almost always behind the chains. That really has to increase how much he throws. But he's a pretty accurate downfield passer, very explosive, and he gets Smith back. So I don't see a lot of issues there, especially against a Jacksonville State secondary that's got some new faces in there. When you switch over to the other side, man, I love this game. I love seeing Rich Rod go. I was really excited to think that Anwar Lewis was going to be playing in this game. He's dealing with an injury. He was not on the published depth chart. It was announced, I believe, today, Wednesday, this morning. He could see some playing time if he's healthy. I think that is why we saw a bump in the total, 53 in some places, up to 54.5, 55 being the biggest key in all of college football. So keep your eyes on that. But this is an offense these two offenses are complete contrasts of each other. UTEP goes about 21 seconds.
Slow.
Yeah. And Rich Rod last year in FCS play, 23.1 seconds per play. They had the 3rd lowest time of possession in all of FCS last year. So when you see Jacksonville State's offense on the field, it's not going to be there very long. You're either going to get Zion trying to bust an explosive play on the ground, or you're going to get Anwar Lewis if he's healthy out there. They did get ULM transfer. Probably, Rich Rod digging in, getting some ULM transfers. Malik Jackson is going to be running the ball there too. Well, he hasn't really shown anything from yards after contact when he did get playing time at ULM, but we'll see what he
averaged
do.
like 3.5.
So you're going to see a lot of
last year.
Yeah. So you're going to, not great. We'll see what he can do here, but the team is really great in total offense and FCS last year. We'll see if that applies here. Their strong points coming into Conference USA. Their offensive line should be able to make some holes. Their special teams is much better than UTEP here coming into the season. So for me, when I looked at these two offenses to see what they're going against, it really screamed over. I'm playing the over here. Both offenses are built in a way to expose the opposing defense. Like I said, Hardison's going to hit Tyron Smith. That is just too much for the Gamecocks secondary. Nickel Colby Fuqua and Maine Black Bears transfer Austin Ambush is the only experience that the Gamecocks have in the secondary. Lots of new faces for Hardison to pick apart. And then, UTEP, Jacksonville State wants to go up tempo. Zion Webb's going to try to create chaos and scrambles. And that's going to go up against a UTEP front 7 that is all JUCO. And I don't know how we handicap whether those are good players or bad players, but they're all fresh new faces for UTEP in the front 7 with all JUCO players. So, a lot has been made about the article I wrote with finishing drives being a direct tie-in to covering spreads. UTEP was 121st in offense last year. They fell from 83rd in 2021. So if UTEP has any regression in what they do past the 40-yard line. Like say they can get to maybe 100th instead of 121st. That's going to equal a lot more points. I mean, they really fell off the map in finishing drives. If they can get some of that back, especially with Tyron Smith there, there's going to be more points in all of their games. So I think you're getting a little bit of a discount here. I'm playing the over. I'm going to be on the floor at Circa on Saturday. Join me in a booth because I'll have some coin down and I'm going to be yelling my head off. Don't cross the number of 55, biggest number in totals in all of college football.
Yeah, my only concern with, I mean, obviously we're still going to see how the rule changes impact totals and the market and what the market thinks of it over the first week or two, which will be interesting to watch. My only concern here, and look, these first two games, which I'm going to have money on in Navy and UTEP, they're very. There's a lot of outcomes that very high variance in both. You have an FCS team jumping up for the first time, and then obviously you have a service academy with a new offense, and you're playing in Ireland. So who knows what UTEP does have one really good defensive end who didn't have a great year last year. Willay or whatever, Prince. My only concern with the total, because I agree with you, I think Jacksonville State's going to go super fast, is if UTEP has their slow grinding drives, just running it down their throat, and then they are scoring touchdowns, and Jacksonville State is down, and they're going fast, but because they're down, they're like, it's Rich Rod, right? So they're going fast, they're going on the field, and then they're not like converting on fourth downs. So you're like, so then they're turning the ball over after like a long drive on a fourth down. And then the only other worry would be, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, is like UTEP is missing field goals because their field goal kicker could be shaky. But maybe they go for it more with their offensive line advantage. We will see. All right. Should be a fun game.
I'm scared to play overs. I'm scared to play overs in week 0, right? I want to see how the clock applies. But there's only 2 games. I'm going to leave the other one for later that I'm going to play the over on. And this is one of them. And I think stuck from a logic standpoint, I shaved 5% of the totals off because I did all the math on the minutes that we're going to kill with the spotting the ball, but it only applies to first downs. I don't mind taking overs on teams that were really subpar FBS last year in creating first downs. If you create a ton of first downs, which like Navy we just talked about, I think they were 3rd in first downs by rush, like that's going to burn a lot of clock. But with teams like UTEP that rely more on explosives than having 12-play drives, then I think you might be okay getting away with an over as a rule of thumb.
Yep. Yeah, and I should say the defensive line is praise Amawule, but they did lose one of their defensive linemen to the NFL. All right, let's move on to the third game of the day. We had Service Academy catching more than 2 touchdowns. We had Minor Nation. Let's bring in UMass, baby. So, yes, I'm going to be on UMass. I already put it in the app. Line's now down to plus 6.5, I think ever. I still like it there. I project this game at New Mexico State -2. I basically have these teams even, and I will tell you why. So, first of all, UMass, I think potentially could be fairly improved. Still going to be one of the worst teams in the country, but they have not had a quarterback. They usually play like 4 or 5 quarterbacks in ages. Well, they finally have one in Tyson Pumachan. My first hard pronunciation. Amawule and Pumachan. I think you pronounce it Pumachan. It looks like Fomachan, but hopefully I got that right. Tyson Pumachan, who was like a top 10 recruit, was at Georgia Tech, Clemson. Like he has a ton of talent. Huge upgrade at UMass. Like just the potential for someone to just complete passes. Can also use his legs. They also brought in some Power 5 transfers at wide receiver. One from Arizona, one from Miami, who started for Miami in Pope. They have a much older, improved offensive line. A couple years ago, their offensive line was just like freshmen, and they were a disaster. Now a bunch of juniors. They should be a little better. So I think the offense has a lot more potential. And, it's year 2 of this system on both sides of the ball. They've lost 24 straight on the road. I think they have a really good chance of winning this game and ending that streak. They played last year at UMass. New Mexico State won that game. They were 1-point favorite. So now they were, around a touchdown. UMass home field is like nothing. Neither is New Mexico State, but there's some travel. But it's the first game of the year. That's assuming that these teams are the same. I think UMass is improved and could be really improved from just going from the worst possible offense you can have to, hey, look, we can actually complete passes and we have some talent at wide receiver. Our offensive line is better. In Mexico State, we know who they are. This offense stinks. And their defense, which I liked last year, I would bet a lot of their unders, and I bet on New Mexico State a bunch of stuff. They lost a lot in their back seven, specifically at safety, which is what I liked for this defense, and they lost a lot there. So I think New Mexico State takes a step back. UMass gets better, and these two teams are on par, and I think UMass is more upside. And I think that a lot of this, and I played New Mexico State win total under as well. I think a lot of people are in the market implied ratings. New Mexico State went up artificially because of what they were doing. But if you dig at the end of the year, they got to 7-6. They beat a horrendous garbage Bowling Green team in a bowl. And they got to a bowl. Here's how they got to a bowl. They beat Hawaii, the rebuilding joke Hawaii, who we're going to get to and probably bet on soon. New Mexico. Then they beat UMass, the rebuilding joke of UMass without a quarterback. Then they beat Lamar. Then they beat the Liberty Corps, who quit. And then they added Valpo and beat them. Like, come on. New Mexico, UMass, Lamar, a Liberty Corps, and then you add Valpo. That was their wins. Like, they had everything go right at the end of the year. Diego Pavia, he improved a little bit. He's still not a good quarterback. This is still not a good offense. I love UMass here. Minute Men football. Outright. Thoughts? Trash pick of the week, by the way, our first of the year.
Yeah, you're wearing the T-shirt. How is New Mexico State favored by 6.5 or 7 over anybody? But no, I think you're right. UMass is definitely on the rebound. A lot of good stuff going on here. They lost their left tackle, Max Longman. He transferred to Indiana, but all the other offensive line spots are solid and secure from last year. You mentioned Tyson Fomachan from Clemson Highly Blue Chip. Pumachan. And what's going to happen is UMass is going to be aggressive running between the tackles. Carlos Davis was a good running back at Western Carolina. He transfers in to take some of the duties there. And Jerry Kill was talking this week about how he does not enjoy going against UMass because what they did on defense last year, they actually finished top 50 in success rate and finishing drives. Like this massive upgrade that UMass had on defense last year. And Jerry Kill mentioned it. He said they're going to put 8 in the box and they always have good corners and they're going to challenge us to throw outside. And that's what they have this year. Jordan Mahoney had 6 PBUs, 3 INTs last year for the Minutemen. He's back. So, UMass is going to cause a lot of problems. And Diego Pavia, if you look at his numbers, they look okay. He had a 2-to-1 ratio in TDs and big time throws over turnover worthy plays and interceptions. So the numbers are there and say that he's okay. He had 500 yards on the ground, pretty even split between scramble and design. But once you get past him, there's not a lot here. They were 121st in offensive success rate. They were 101st in finishing drives. So if UMass can figure it out on the offensive side of the ball, which they think they finally have the talent to kind of figure it out, then they can win this game outright. So I don't know if I'm worried about the humidity is going to actually be pretty low. I know it's going to be 94 degrees in Las Cruces, and Amherst is rolling at about mid 70s. But the humidity is actually going to be pretty low on Saturday. So I'm not really worried about the heat. But I would be worried if I'm New Mexico State and I'm trying to cover that inside zone that UMass is going to run. And plus the corners. Jerry Kill's right. The corners are a problem. 8 in the box. Always trying to create havoc on defense. I agree. I like UMass. I think the under is probably going to hit. Not sure if I'm going to play it. If I make any kind of round robin parlay, I'll definitely have a UMass money line ticket in there.
Yeah, look, Pavia, you look at his numbers, they're not, look, yes, on the surface, he had 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Let's take a closer look. By the way, this is a guy that went 6 of 19 for 50 yards against Wisconsin, 6 of 17 for 70 yards against Missouri. Valparaiso, he had 4 touchdowns, no picks, and 330 yards. Lamar, he had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 150 yards. UMass, he had 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. And so Valpo, and then the corpse of Liberty, who didn't get off the bus, he had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. So against Valpo, Liberty, Lamar, and UMass, he had 11 touchdowns and no interceptions. And all the other games, he had 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Like, he benefited from just 4 corpses or FCS teams. That's it. This offense is terrible. I'm excited for UMass to burn me on opening day, but we're going to do it. And yeah, the defense did improve last year. And guess what? If the defense improves, if the offense improves, that's going to help the defense even more. The defense improved with having to be on the field the entire game and then just breaking down at the end, which is what happened in the Mexico State game. I think they were up or tied at the half because UMass couldn't sustain any drives. The defense was on the field all day. So now I think the offense will be better. That'll help the defense. Let's go, Minutemen. All right, so we started with, I got a Navy, UMass, and UTEP ticket so far. Let's move on to the 4th game of the day, Ohio, San Diego State. This game is also at 7 Eastern. Ohio, San Diego State 2.5 point favorite. This number's come down. It was up above 3. Total sitting around 48.5. Our quarterback, the Maple Missile, Mr. O'Rourke, was announced that he's going to start. He tore his ACL last year, but he's ready to go. So Ohio took money as a result. And I think a lot of people are betting Ohio here. This game 7 Eastern on FS1. I'm curious. Let me get your thoughts first here. Are you just going to tell us to bet the San Diego State over?
Well, I'm betting the over. I'm just waiting for
Oh my God, this is the most classic week 0 episode ever. We got all of my teams, the San Diego State over.
Yeah, we're not changing any form here. No, I do like the over. I don't like the number. I would rather have 48. I do see a couple books that got 48.5 out there. So I'm willing to be patient here. I'm willing to see if this trickles down. I'm wondering if people just see the name San Diego State and pile in on the under, and that'll give me a better number. But there's a lot to like here from the offenses on both sides. I mean, this is the best quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio in the MAC between Curtis Rourke, Sam Wiggles on the outside, and then Sia Bangera, one of the just an absolute Tuesday, Wednesday night banger for us in MAC football. He's a 1,000-yard running back. He created 46 missed tackles, 13 TDs. He had 26 runs over 10 yards. When I talked to Brady Hoke at Mountain West Conference Media Days, cash your tickets. He was worried about the trench on both sides of the ball. That tells me that Bangura is going to be able to run wild here. So I don't know what Rourke and Wiggles is going to do against the secondary of San Diego State, but I think the running lanes are going to be open all day here for Ohio to do that. And if there is a issue with Ohio, it's their secondary. This secondary might be the worst in the MAC. Defensive coordinator Spence Nowitzki, he has a nickel scheme, but it's not paying off. They did finish top 35 in havoc, but the problem is they were 126th in tackling. They were 113th in coverage. It's not good. And if you're going to face a quarterback that's going to try to sling it down the field, that can be a problem. Oh, let's talk about Jalen Maiden, who completely redeemed himself. He stunk in the spring game. He stunk in the first scrimmage, comes out in the second scrimmage, tosses two TDs in the first 2 drives, completes a 48-yard pass down the middle of the field. That is to start the game. That was his very first pass, was 48 yards down the field. I don't know if that says something about San Diego State's secondary, but what I do know is that Ohio has 2 new safeties. That's going to be an issue. And now Brady Hoke emphasized the fact that, Jalen Maiden came in last year with a playbook that wasn't his, a coordinator that was in flux. I mean, they're hiring guys. Now Ryan Lindley is in tow, and they've completely tailored the playbook around the skills of Maiden. And I think that's a good thing because all I can hear is we want him to tuck and run. We want him to run as many times as possible. That's going to open up things downfield whenever he gets behind the chains and he has to throw. So again, this is kind of what I see in one of the UTEP Jacksonville State game earlier. I like the over here because Ohio has a couple of safeties that are not ready for any downfield shots. Ohio on the offensive side of the ball is going to be able to run with Sia Bangera against this brand new San Diego State defensive line that even Brady Hoke's got worries about. So I love the fact that the offenses can dominate in the places that they want to. So I'm going to take an over in this game, but it is still San Diego State. So I am going to look for the best number and wait for 48. As far as the spread goes, I mean, I think this has gone way too far. I mean, 2.5, you're like essentially saying that. Yeah. I mean, what are you saying here? That on a neutral field, this is a pick? I don't think so. Like you're taking a MAC team on the road out to the west. Come on, what's going on here?
We're going to switch it up with the podcast. I'm fading my beloved Bobs. And yeah, I'm taking San Diego State now. This is under a field goal. I make this closer to 5. And here's a couple things that I like. I mean, the San Diego State offense, I think, is being undervalued. When Maiden came in, and this is a guy who was playing safety, he threw in his first start more yards than San Diego State had thrown for total in 5 games. So their offense down the stretch was so much better. Now he has a year under his belt. And look, San Diego State still wants to run the ball. And you're going to be able to run on this Ohio team and throw on them. Ohio lost their entire defensive line. Like Caesar and company, they were big. And by the way, Ohio's starting corner, Cox, he's banged up. He might not play. And by the way, Jacoby Jones, their second best receiver, he's also banged up. That'd be important because I really like one of the San Diego State's corners. San Diego State's pass defense fell off last year, but they returned 6 of 7. Yes, the front, they lost a ton. They lost really good players. They lost their whole D-line and 2 really good linebackers. Hoke, you said, is worried about it. But if there is one thing that San Diego State, who's at a top 20 defense since fucking the Ice Age, they always figure out the run defense, and they always just plug in their D-line and linebackers. And last year, their pass D took a big step back. But I think that, 6 or 7 back, that defensive pedigree, they're going to be really improved. And, yeah, so I think they'll be able to move the ball on this team. We also, look, with Jones potentially banged up, we don't know how healthy Rourke is, how hesitant he's going to be. And also, the other thing, Ohio lost a really, really good kicker in Vacos. San Diego State, which once again had a top 5, a really good special teams coordinator, top 5, 10 special teams last year, brings back Browning, who is awesome. He's their punter and their kicker. He had a monster year. I think he was the Mountain West Conference Special Teams Player of the Year last year. So if it comes down to a field goals, Ohio's going to miss theirs at their MAC team after losing Vacos. And San Diego State has outstanding special teams across the board. So, yeah, I think that could be a difference, too, in a really close game. And now that it's under a field goal, it is still San Diego State. I think that's important. I think this has come down too much.
Yep.
And everyone I'm seeing is betting Ohio, so it makes sense. And then you have the Rourke news. So, yeah, I'm fading. We're fading the MAC here. I'm going with San Diego State under a field goal.
I don't think it's going to get less than minus 130 on the money line. That's what I'm staring at right now. I mean, there is a 2 out there, but I'd rather just lay the money line. I would love 125, but if I got to lay minus 130, I will. But
I'll join you on the money line. I'm going to wait to see how low it goes. Because it's San Diego State, too, and a MAC team. So, like, a 1-point win is definitely in the cards. Like, weird things definitely happen. San Diego State, by the way, has owned the MAC historically, including last year.
They have one loss. Do you know who it's to?
Toledo. It was to Ohio, I think.
10-1-1. It was to Ohio,
5 years ago or something, maybe. If I had to guess.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're in agreement there, and Colin got his San Diego State over, so our producer could play that clip. As always, for everyone wondering, Colin went a stretch of like 10 weeks trying to bet the San Diego State over. And it went under, and then he bet the under, and it went over. So it was a big thing.
Yeah.
And we got a bunch of voicemails about it. All right, let's move on to another night game. Hawaii at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, 17.5-point home favorite. over under 55.5. Let me take you back in time. We just talked about 5 years ago, I think I just mentioned. Take you back in time. Rewind the clock. 2017. Nick Rolovich is the coach of Hawaii. They were horrendous. They won 3 games. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring back the June Jones run and shoot. And for 2018. 2018, week 1, they play Colorado State. They're 17-point underdogs. The year before, they lost to Colorado State by 1 billion. They came out and they rolled outright and then started 6-1. Well, this year, Timmy Chang, who started to implement some of the run and shoot towards the end of last year, and you saw some improvements in the offense, which was so bad early, is going full on board the old June Jones run and shoot offense. And they start with Vandy, and they're catching 17 on the road. They were at Colorado State, by the way, in that game when they were catching 17 and rolled. You want to hear a throwback name in that game? KJ, what the hell was the Colorado State? KJ Samuels. What the hell was his name? Carter. KJ. What was the Colorado State? He had a weird name. Oh God. KJ Carter Samuels was he threw for like 5 touchdowns. I think the score was like 60-40. Hawaii won. And
Carter,
Hawaii started. Carter Samuels. Hawaii started 6-1 that year. So there's some precedent here. And for what it's worth, they started Cole McDonald, who never started before. They had a brand new quarterback and a brand new system. Now you're actually bringing back a quarterback who started to, get some of those run and shoot principles that Chang was implementing at the end of last year. And you have Braden Shager, who's back at quarterback, didn't start for a while when the offense, he started the opener, then didn't start for 3 games. He's worked all offseason with Dan Morrison, who, was the quarterback's coach at Hawaii under June Jones. No one knows the run and shoot as well as him or obviously June Jones. So there's potential here for this Hawaii offense to be significantly improved right off the bat. And Vandy's not going to know what hit him. Vandy rolled last year. Might be taking him lightly here. It is timing based, but that Colorado State game gives me hope. They put up 1 billion yards with a first-time quarterback. I'm already on Hawaii next week. And by the way, teams that play a first game against teams that haven't, like teams that play week 0 against teams that didn't, very successful against the spread historically. We'll talk about that next week. But I think I'm going to bet Hawaii too again here, catching 17.5. I make this lower. I like the run and shoot pop coming and just surprising Vandy here. Last year, Vandy was Vandy took a ton of money, I think, on game day, if I recall. But you got to remember, I think what was the spread? 9 it closed at? 10? But they got to 14.
I thought it was. It rose from 6 to 9. It was 7.5 on game day. And
it got up to 9 or 10. So now you're going right. There's not. You're switching home fields, but that Hawaii team was brand new, right? Everyone left in the portal. They started completely over. They were a disaster early. So they are so much improved. And how much really is Vandy improved? So you could argue that Hawaii could be a touchdown better than they were, how they were playing at that point in the state of their program. So over 17 with the Bows, I'm interested. It's convinced me.
I'm interested too. I mean, I project this at 13. So my problem.
I'm at
with
13 and a half.
Yeah, these teams are so horrific at finishing drives. Both of them bottom 20 nationally. I cannot get over how bad these teams just fall apart once they get into scoring position. And I was telling Timmy Chang, actually on the floor at Circa, interesting story for that. I told him, I said, you guys are top 30 in tempo. I'm like, oh yeah, we like to play fast. We like to be fast. I said, but you went to the under 9 times. And he's thinking, I see it computing in his head. And I'm like, that is your finishing drives, right? You're not able to score. There's a ton of unders here, but you're one of the fastest teams in the nation. And, I think that's something that we'll see if they can improve on. And Braden Shager's he just has no protection whatsoever. 7th highest in pressures of any quarterback in FBS football last year. We'll see if they can get this turned around. Not a lot to boast home about. 63% returning on offense, 39% returning on defense. So, and their defense was 129th in generating havoc.
Yeah, who cares?
So
they brought in
you're just going
to – it's not going to get worse.
They did. And it's not going to be as worse as last year. And, this is a very close-knit team. Just the way Timmy Chang coaches, it's like he's still a player. I mean, it's amazing. They always go in packs. There's always groups, and there's a real rah-rah high five. It's definitely a different atmosphere than what we get with Clark Lee. Clark Lee being very formal, and AJ Swan's going to be the quarterback. He had a pretty impressive year. He's really good when he has a clean pocket. I didn't see, I think 118th Hawaii was in pass rush last year, so they didn't generate much. And if they can't, then AJ Swan's probably going to have some success. But, the thing is this is a very large inflated point spread. And a lot of people look at that 63-10 game from last year and think that that's just going to happen again. I'm not sure that it does. And one thing that I think the total is way too high. It's blitzed past 55. It's at 55.5. If these teams behave like they did last year, I'm not
betting a Hawaii under. You cannot. I don't.
You're not betting Hawaii under.
I don't care.
That's all this team did was unders last year.
I don't care. There's nothing you can say to me. If this run and shoot comes out and has success early, no. Well, I'm not betting Hawaii under to start the year. I'm not sitting there on Saturday.
I'll say this: why? This isn't even the last game.
Spending the first day of college football.
Well, I think the problem also for me, I'm interested in the under, but the big problem for me is Vanderbilt was almost dead last in the nation last year in allowing pass explosives. That doesn't look like it's going to get any better this year. They only returned 48% on defense. I'm shocked that Clark Lee, who is a disciple of Mike Elko, and was a big piece of a big part of Notre Dame going to playoff a few years ago, that their defense fell to bottom 10 in tackling and coverage, because tackling and coverage is all coach-based, technique-based, practice, and how does a Clark Lee defense fall that far confuses me a little bit. So I'm very interested in the Hawaii side. I'm going to join you there. Maybe it'll steam a little bit more. I don't see it coming back across 17. And I think you're right. I can't play the under when Vanderbilt's been so bad against pass explosives. So there we go. I mean, you and I are rummaging. If only Charlotte played this weekend.
Yep. We're going to be on Hawaii. It's week 0. You better be on it with me. You can fire. There's only 7 games. Here's a game I won't be on pregame, but I might look for an opportunity to bet it live or second half. That's USC San Jose State, 8 p.m. Eastern, Pac-12 Network. USC 31-point favorite. When I look at this game, Chevin Cordero is back for San Jose State, but they have a lot of really critical losses elsewhere, specifically on the defensive line, and that was like the heart of their defense last year, and that's going to be tough against USC. Like, how are you going to get stops? So, this has potential to get ugly early. So, and I make this 29.5. So, I don't see value pregame either way. But here's my potential thinking. Is we saw USC, but I don't know which way it's going to go. So I want to get your thoughts on this. So USC last year, they wore down against Utah. Towards the end of the year, they wore down against Tulane at the end of the game. So they play from week 4, 9 straight weeks. USC, they have a really early bye. So does part of what they want to do here in these first couple cake games is get Caleb Williams a ton of stats for his Heisman early, build a lead, and then get rest, and then other guys rep. I'm sure they also want to work on some new defensive, just a different defensive looks, some backups on defense. And then they also probably want to get their backup quarterback some run before they go to the Big Ten next year, even though Caleb Williams is hinting he might come back, but you have to assume he's not. So does Lincoln Riley say, let's just, in these games, let's get up by 28 at the half, and then let's get our backup quarterbacks in. Let's get some rest early in the year because we got to play 9 straight weeks. So does that potentially open up an opportunity to bet San Jose State second half if they're down by 1,000,000, and they're going against a USC defense that definitely has questions, especially depth wise. And then Caleb Williams will be out of the game, and I'm thinking earlier than maybe the market might think. What are your thoughts there?
Well, yes, absolutely. And I think there's two things that people need to know when you're going to bet on this game. Do I make it this high? No, I don't. Am I going to back San Jose State? Absolutely not. They lose 20. They return only 20% of their pressures on the defensive line. I'm not sure they could have busted through the USC offensive line in the first place, but they only returned 20% of their pressures last year. They are not going to get their hands. They're not going to sniff, touch, graze, be anywhere near Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams said it twice in Vegas at Pac-12 Media Days. He said, I realized last year that, especially when we lost to Utah in the Pac-12 championship game, that I don't have to leave the pocket. I don't have to scramble, and I don't have to get all these yards myself. I can stay in the pocket, and I can just take shots downfield. I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, San Jose State, you're in deep shit because your secondary is in trouble. Your defensive line loses all of its pressures. All these new defensive players that you have, you're going to get USC and the Heisman winner in week 1. The other thing that would bother me if you want to back San Jose State pregame is the fact that the defense actually for USC now has some talent. Mason Cobb comes in, middle linebacker comes in from Oklahoma State. He was one of the best linebackers in the Big 12. Now he's going to be patrolling the middle for USC. Alex Grinch is hearing all the whispers about how much of a terrible job that he's done. Siobhan Cordero is, I don't even know if we can call him Caleb Williams light. But really, after you get past him as a weapon, they do have experienced offensive line. They do have the most experienced tight ends. I do love Brent Brennan, as a coach, but this is just way too much, especially for a USC team that has a Heisman winner that wants to put up Heisman numbers and is convinced he doesn't need to run all over the place and just take shots deep downfield. Taj Washington, Mario Williams, that is scary. So I don't know what the betting deliverable here is, Stuck, because you're right. This could be 35-0 by the end of the first quarter. Maybe there's a speed bump in the first 2 drives. I don't know why, because it's the first 2 drives, and maybe all those points come in the second quarter. What number? Maybe we leave everybody with this. What number are you playing live on San Jose State? 38?
I don't think I want to play it live. I'll play it second half, and because I think depending on how big, like if USC is up like 35-0 or 28 or more at the half, and then I can get San Jose State as a dog in the second, nice dog in the second half. I think that they're not, like, maybe 28 might be too low, maybe 31 or more. Then I think that they might just not play Williams in the second half, and then they're going to try some things out on defense. It's going to depend on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on a feel thing, but keep an eye on the Action Network app. I'm going to be looking for San Jose State. They got to be down by a lot, because I'm just thinking that if it's a certain amount, then it's not just not Caleb Williams. I think it's like other starters too. They're going to try to get a lot of rest. They played 9 straight weeks. They wore down last year. They also want to see some other bodies on this defense, try some other things. So if they're getting crushed, but the defensive line losses. I mean, and it's not just they lost all their pressures. Hall and Fehoko were unbelievable players. Fehoko got drafted, I think, in the 3rd or 4th round. He's on the Cowboys now. They were really good defensive linemen at San Jose State. All right, let's move on to the final.
Do they get to 50? Because, by the total and the spread, we're looking at about a 49-17 game. Does USC get to 50? They should. I'm going to
say, I'll say they get – depends on how long they play Caleb Williams. I'll say they get between 48 and 55, depending on how long they play. Depends. If San Jose State gets a couple touchdowns early, then they could get really ugly because they got to keep everyone in.
I wonder what the first half team total is on USC, because if it's 27.5 or 28, that is probably where I'll be looking if I play anything pregame on this one.
All right, let's move on to the last game of the night, week 0. Florida International at Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech, 11-point favorites here. I'll tell you that this is a little different speed, but I played Louisiana Tech leg 10. I
Ooh.
played them up to 11.5. So last year, FIU, they won 4 games. Here's who they beat: UMass, New Mexico State, Charlotte, and Bryant by 1 on a miraculous comeback at home
In overtime.
So, and that team last year, and I have a lot of respect for Mike McIntyre. It was his first year. They had a running back named Lexington Joseph. It was pretty good. He tore his ACL, as BJ now knows. They had a really, really good wide receiver in Tyrese Chambers, who I loved, who could just go off at any time. He's gone. Transferred out. They lost their other top receiver, too. And they only have, I think, 35 to 40 starts in the offensive line returning with a new O-line coach. Key losses at defensive tackle. They lost their star linebacker to the portal. The D has a lot more experience in the offense, but I think this offense is a joke. I mean, this team is a joke. They beat a couple of clowns late in the year. We'll see if they show up with helmets this time. La Tech has revenge from that game. They've been talking about it all summer. Like, some of the quotes today were like, yes, it's revenge. And yeah, obviously a lot of that's narrative, but they've been waiting for this game. So they got lost in overtime in embarrassing fashion. How did they lose to FIU? They started when we used to always fade them. They lost last year. They started. This is Sonny Cumbie, by the way. His second year of his passing offense, I expect to improve. He started the year with McNeil and Downing as his quarterbacks, and they actually started to show some promise. They threw for like 400 one game. They both got hurt. They were out for the year. They were down to a true freshman, your boy Liddy, who was awful, and then a walk-on played too. They went 0-4 with those two. They lost to Charlotte, FIU. Got destroyed by UAB and UTSA. So, like, their numbers were so deflated because they just didn't have a quarterback. So now you bring in Hank Bachmeier. Say what you want about him. Ton of experience. Huge upgrade over what they were playing with at the end of last year. So, and he should be able to pick apart this FIU defense. They're going to be up for it. They did lose their top receiver, but you got Cyrus Allen. Dakotas Crawford from the Nebraska isn't on the depth chart, but they have the best names if he was. Like it would be Cyrus Allen, Smoke Harris, who's awesome, great returner too, and Dakotas Crawford. The running back room's a bit of a concern because their main guy, Crosby's out. He was their leading rusher last year. I think like third team all conference, leading returning rusher in the conference. He's out. Tyree Shelton, the transfer from Miami of Ohio, he's like questionable. But does it really matter against FIU? You got a bunch of you lost a really good guard, but you got your center back from injury. A lot of returning starts, and like their secondary got depleted. Not a lot returning on D, but it was bad anyway. And this is FIU. They lost all their best players. I think La Tech blitzes them. Lay it.
Yeah. Well, I have a full preview coming out at Action Network. Everyone go check it out in the Action app. Believe last night or maybe yesterday morning, I bet La Tech -5.5 at DK and in the first half. And that number, I believe, is about 6 everywhere else. But I would shop for that and get that number because you're right, Stuck. That's all these guys can talk about is that this game is personal after they lost in double overtime to Florida International last year. So not only that, the best unit, the most cohesive and most talented aspect of this game is Hank Bachmeier's arm throwing to Smoke Harris and Cyrus Allen. Now, Smoke Harris probably gets a lot of attention, but Cyrus Allen, 2.13 yards per route run. He is extremely explosive. He's going to get one-on-one coverage. I don't even know if he's going to get covered by Florida International secondary, but that is the most explosive. And if there's anything from Hank Bachmeier I can remember from Boise State, he's got no problem an average depth of target. The guy can throw a mile. Maybe not the best decision-making, but then again, Boise State didn't protect him very well, and he got concussed almost every other game. So we'll see how that goes. I can't really make a case for Florida International other than the fact that I can say that Louisiana Tech's defense is horrific. 130th in tackling last season, 122nd in line yards. This team was near dead last in defending rush explosives. It just bad up and down the board. And when you look at what they return on defense, I don't get a lot of warmth that they're going to be able to improve. The warmth all comes on the offense. 70% of experience returning the offensive lines. They should be able to protect Bachmeier. Smoke Harris and Cyrus Allen are going to go crazy. New defensive back 7 from the portal on the defense. So I'm taking the first half. I want to avoid any La Tech secondary, I don't want
big
any
backdoor
Florida
risk. There's
International
big backdoor risk here. Yeah.
The 11 screams backdoor. I'd stop betting this at 11. I'm going to go first half, let La Tech extract the demons of losing in double overtime to the Panthers last year, and then let the rest of the game ride.
So, Colin, everybody at Action knows I treat my body like a temple. That's why I'm excited about our new sponsor, Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Factor hooks you up with delicious, chef-prepared, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your house. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with a healthy lifestyle. There are 3 main things we love about Factor. 1, no chopping, prepping, or cleaning up. 2, you get great flavor and the nutritional quality you need to tackle challenging topics like the UMass defense. 3, Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. So this August, run your own 2-minute drill with Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Select your meals and enjoy fresh meals delivered to your door. Just head to factormeals.com/BBOC50. That's BBOC50 and use code BBOC50 to get 50% off. That's code BBOC50 at factormeals.com/BBOC50 to get 50% off. I have some on the way. They're sending me. And I will tell you, our producer, Matt Mitchell, shout to him, raves about them. Says him and his wife have been eating for months. So that is an authentic plug, and I'll let you guys know how they are, but I'm excited to get some. And Colin, also, a very quick note to our listeners. Week 0 means college football is about to make its first impression. And whether you're a football team or a football fan, we all want to make good first impressions. For me, that means taking care of my skin, which I'm doing with the help of our sponsor, Caldera Lab. Caldera Lab is a skincare routine you can do right before you brush your teeth. Just a minute in the morning, a minute in the evening. Easy. The Caldera Lab regimen consists of just 3 products: the Clean Slate, the Base Layer, and the Good. The Clean Slate is the face wash, the Base Layer is the moisturizer, and the Good is a night serum to reduce visible wrinkles so you don't turn into an old catcher's mitt. Since we love talking about stats and rankings here, Caldera Lab clinical trials found 94% of men's skin showed an overall younger looking appearance after using their products for just a few weeks. Just 1 minute in the morning and night to reduce signs of aging caused by the weather, the sun, and your bets going to overtime. Today, our audience gets an exclusive offer, their best offer anywhere. Use code BBOC at calderalab.com and you can get 20% off right now. That's 20% off with code BBOC at calderalab.com and make unforgettable first impressions that lead to the charming words, "You look younger." 20% off at calderalab.com with code BBOC. All right, Kyle, before we get out of here, I do have also, I'm going to run through a couple giveaways, but just quickly, best bet for week 0. Well, while you think about it, I'll go. I'm going to say UMass. I'd play this, stuff 6.5. I'd play this down to 6. Last year, this line, New Mexico State was a 1-point favorite on the road at UMass. They ended up winning that game. I think New Mexico State overall is worse. Their profile improved by beating teams that quit, or FCS teams, or really bad rebuilding teams last year. At the end of the year, that's where their quarterback padded his stats. They lost a lot on the back 7. I think their defense gets worse. UMass, meanwhile, has the potential to be significantly better. They actually have a quarterback now, a very highly rated quarterback coming out of high school in Tyson Pumachan. They added some FBS transfers, even some with starting experience. Their offensive line is now older. A lot of juniors there, so that's going to be better. That's also going to help their defense, which showed improvement last year. I think UMass is on the rise. I think they can end their 24-game road losing streak and pull this off. Go UMass. I'm going to go to you for your best bet. The only rule is that you are not allowed, just in the spirit of the podcast, you cannot choose Notre Dame, New Mexico State, or Vanderbilt. You choose those games, just not those sides.
All right. So, yeah, we'll avoid those. I'm going to go UTEP Jacksonville State over, try to get the key number below 55, which is the biggest number in totals in college football. There's a lot going on here with both of these offenses where what they do best, their identity and how they make their money, goes against the opposing defenses that they're playing against. First off, for UTEP, you have quarterback Gavin Hardison in his 5th year. He gets Tyron Smith back, who could not transfer to Texas A&M because of a credits issue. That's 122 catches and his best wide receiver coming back against the Jacksonville State secondary that loses a whole bunch of players. There's only 2 players with experience back there. It should be enough for UTEP when they get into those 3rd and long situations that they're always in to completely expose that defense back there. When you look at what Rich Rod does with the Jacksonville State offense, extremely fast, 23 seconds per play. Zion Webb at quarterback is going to scramble all day and create yards. That's going against a UTEP front 7 that is loaded with JUCO players, first time for them to play. And oh, by the way, Anwar Lewis, breaking news on this Wednesday, might be recovered from his injury. And if he does, he is the best ground rusher attack on both sides of the ball here. Average 4.3 yards after contact. So if he plays, it only boosts this over, which I expect to push towards 55 if he's announced playing. But take the over. Both the offenses do what the opposing defenses cannot contain. I like it all the way up to 54.5.
Yep. Also, public service announcement. I mentioned week 0. I have a little fun. Probably going to bet most of these games. Time to do it. But also make sure you bet responsibly. Last year, I think, had one of my best college football seasons ever. Didn't have one bad Saturday. I can promise you that won't be the case this year. If you take a look when you have a Saturday and all those bets, if you can't afford a horrific, 4-13, 4-16 day, just look at your card and say, if everything went wrong and I went 4-13, it's going to happen. Promise you. If you can't afford that, you're betting too much. Make sure you bet responsibly. And before we get out of here, I do want to do a couple giveaways. By the way, one other quick note on Vanderbilt, Hawaii. Vanderbilt lost their leading rusher. Their running back room is really weak. That could really help Hawaii because that's just anyone could just hand it off and gash Hawaii. So maybe that helps. It's still SEC, and maybe they'll be able to do that. But thought I'd bring that up. Let's do some giveaways. We love when people leave reviews, 5-star reviews. This is the time that really help us out. And we just do a bunch of giveaways. When you do it, doesn't matter what you say. Just leave a 5-star review. If you've already left one before, just grab a phone of your girlfriend, mom, whoever, and leave one. But let's do a bunch of giveaways. Marshall M14, when you break down the lines of Eastern Michigan and Bowling Green, there's no other pod you need to listen to. Master Berte, best college football podcast out there. They have real passion, energy. Can't wait for another season. Psycha Sports, back from vacation, got the notebook, feverishly taking notes. Love it. T. Schaefer, if you listen to one college football podcast each week, it's this. Great mix of analytics, stat-driven analysis, and eye test, watching the games. These guys know their stuff and will make you money. GME Saint, this podcast has helped me become a smarter, better throughout the years. Top-notch stuff. Love to hear it. Trash picks up UTEP Minor Nation is just a review. Love that. You're in. Jace59, excellent pod, perfect for college football. Love doing all the conferences, much appreciated. Let's keep going. Eldon Fairbanks, smart, profitable, most importantly entertaining. Peter24, I'm astounded by the knowledge. Chris Codd, can't say enough good things about this show. Sucking Colin, go deep. And funny preview after the weekend. Patter222, Tanda's the best. CU 2001, ready for another profitable season, Colin. It's stuck. And one last one. Jobu Flamingo Pool, your podcast is the best. Love listening to my commute. Reach out to our producer, Matt Mitchell, or me. I'll send them to you. And we'll send you some gear. It's a free giveaway. So we'll do some more throughout the year. So just leave a 5-star review. They really help us out. As always, make sure you tell a friend, tell an enemy. Subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe. It's good to be back. 7 games, hour and 20 minutes. I got to figure out a way next week and the weeks after to do 120. But it's time for us to continue to go get to work. Let's have some fun on Saturday, and let's have a profitable season. It's good to be back. Don't forget about the voicemail. Shouts, as always, to all of our sponsors, our producers, video, audio teams on the back end, and, of course, to all of you. We'll catch you all next time. Cheers.
Peace out.